Welcome to Old Guy Tech,
the OGT.TV recording studio.
Technology for the rest of us.
Hey, I'm Rob Charney with Old Guy Tech TV interviews, and today our interview is with Joseph Hoffman, running for judge in El Dorado County. And I just want to thank you, Joe, for coming on in and spending a little bit of time with us here at Old Guy Tech TV in our little studio. And I always say to all the people running for office, thank God for you. Thank you very much for the service and the time that you're putting into being even running. And it doesn't matter what office it is. It's just the fact that you're putting yourself out there. You're working your butt off, probably harder than you ever would in your normal job. And it takes people like you to run. So thank you very much for running. We really appreciate it. And that's all part of the system, of course. So why don't we get a little introduction? We've known each other for a little while, but let's let the audience get to know you a little bit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your family and your life, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So been a practicing attorney for about 19 years, a little over 19 years. The office is with my wife and I out at Cameron Park, and we have another office in Folsom. We have two kids, a 14-year-old daughter and an almost 12-year-old son. He makes me say almost.
Almost, yes.
A couple weeks. And basically I used to joke, back when I had free time, I used to coach a lot. I still coach my daughter's basketball team, but with the campaign and everything else,
what's
it's
free
a lot
time?
of time. It's a lot of time. But that's really a passion of mine, is to be coaching, working with her, working with the girls. It's just a fun way to spend the off time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, it's, thank God for family life too. But I know when you're running, it's very difficult. Also in the audience, if you would like to talk to Joe, our phone number is 530-621-1210. Feel free to give a call in at any time, and we'll try to answer your questions. So, Joe, why don't you talk a little bit about what you think are the main issues having to do with courts? I know we have facility issues and some security issues and other things. But what do you feel? How are we doing with the courts, and how has the state treated them? And because I know we have to be careful what we talk about, and I don't want to step on any toes on your end of it. But why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on with the courts?
Well, I mean, the states have pretty much decimated the courts for a lot of reasons. They've taken millions and millions of dollars out of the court budget.
Right.
That the court actually did, in my opinion, from what I know, did a really good job about maintaining a budget.
Right.
But when the state got tight, they looked for places that there were money, and they took the money.
They said, look at all this money that the courts have. They don't need it.
And so it decimates it. It makes it so getting a new courthouse in El Dorado is very, very difficult. It makes it so that there's courtrooms scattered throughout the county, which duplicates costs, which drives me crazy.
Right.
It's just, it forces them to be somewhat fiscally irresponsible because they can't spend the money that's needed to not be fiscally irresponsible.
Right.
And so that's a problem from a state level. The other thing is, I think there's a certain segment of the population that has concerns about the courts because of delays, time constraints, what they perceive as a waste of time and issues within the court system that some of them are fixable, some of them probably are not.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that are fixable or that can be made better, we should spend the time to make them better.
Yeah. So how is the workload for the judges? Are you guys pretty doggone busy?
The judges are definitely busy. If they look at the statistics, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's essentially we're a judge down from where we should be given the number of cases.
Okay.
And anytime that happens, that's a big problem for the public at large because it means everything's going to be a little slower.
Right.
Because there's one less judge to handle things. And so that's always going to be a problem until we get the budget squared away and can get that other judge put in place and the caseload more balanced between them.
Yeah, it's got to be really tough. And I know it's tough on people on both sides of an issue going to a court where everything has to either get delayed or it takes so long. And I know that some of the judges have been kind of accused of not willing to take a position and drags the case out a little bit. And how's your philosophy on dealing with the cases and the caseloads that come before you?
The bottom line is the public wants just a very few basic things when they go to court. They want to be heard, They want to make sure that everyone they're able to get their information before the judge so that the judge can then make a fair, reasoned decision.
Mm-hmm.
When a judge hears all of the evidence and doesn't make a decision, that's extremely frustrating for not only the client, but the attorneys as well,
Sure.
speaking from that side of it.
Sure, yeah.
Because now you start thinking of things maybe we should have done this. What if we would have done that? It's like watching a football game the day after and saying, well, geez, he shouldn't have thrown that pass.
Right.
Well, no kidding, it was intercepted. We can all agree with that now.
Yeah.
But when you're in that moment, there's certain things you want to get across, and you expect the judge to make a decision after that.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a complex area of law where the judge needs to do some research to make sure that he makes the right decision, I have zero problem with that. That's what
Okay.
should happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's just being, 90 days later to get a ruling, is just it doesn't build public confidence in the system. That's for sure.
Yeah, I imagine it would be very difficult for anybody, especially if your life is and your lifestyle and the possibility of going into jail is hanging out there for all that time. It's not easy on those individuals as well.
And it's not even, that's absolutely true, but it carries over to the civil context as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in a lawsuit and you allow it to get to the point, or forced to get to the point of trial,
Right.
which, bear in mind, most cases don't go to trial.
Right.
So when you have a case that has gone to trial, it's a year and a half in the making.
It's been a
at
long
least,
process.
and you've invested, and it could be time, it could be money, it could be emotion. And when you finally get your facts before the court,
Right.
and you've in that room,
Right.
you want, when it's all done, for the judge to say, you win, you lose, here's why, next case.
Right.
You don't want to have it now be just hanging out there, because the not knowing is worse than knowing,
Oh,
even
sure.
when you lose.
Sure.
And for me as an attorney, that's the biggest factor to me, is I want a judge who's decisive. Make a call.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to hurt my feelings, hurt my client's feelings, hurt the other side's feelings. Just make the call.
Make a decision.
Make a
one
decision.
One way or the other. Is that kind of a product of the workload that the judges have? That sometimes they've got to spend a tremendous amount of time researching whatever it may be, and if their workload is so large, is that possibly part of the problem?
It's absolutely part of the problem, but I think there are times where it compounds itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a busy workload and you take a case under submission, that now you have to go back and write a written decision to let everyone know what the answer is,
Right.
when you could be in open court and state your decision,
Right.
I believe it's far faster to state it
Right.
than it would be to write out this interview. It's going to be much faster for us to talk about it than
Right.
if we tried to write it back and forth. And so when you're already bogged down in a lot of cases,
Right.
and then you start having things stack up because you have to make written decisions on them, it has a
It
tendency
snowballs.
to snowball.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Well, so I can see where that happens. So let's help me understand a little bit about. We started on this the court on their budget. Let's talk about a little bit about the money and how the fine system works, and how I'm assuming I don't understand a thing where that money goes. So I go to court, and let's say it's a fish and game violation. You get written up for no license or something like that, and I get a fine. How is that money handled, and where does it go?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know the specific breakdown, but and to a certain extent, I'm speculating. My guess is that dollar gets split into several different pots.
Sure.
Between state, local, it depends on the fine, depends on the violation.
Right.
That gets spread out over a large group of
Everybody
agencies,
wants their
I'm certain.
handout.
I'm certain of that.
Sure.
I'm certain of that. But again, that's something that's beyond my expertise from as far as my practice.
Right.
And really, the judges don't get too terribly involved in where it goes. There's certain delineated fines, and that's kind of how it spaces out.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out for myself, and this is something maybe to work on a little bit, is exactly how does that fine money get distributed? I know in El Dorado County, I used a Fish and Game Commission example because I sat on the Fish and Game Commission for a number of years, and I was watching how the money through the court system wasn't actually being split properly. Even to their own rules, and they didn't seem to care, you know. And it's like, really, And a little bit of it, and maybe you know about this, maybe you don't, a little bit of it was their lack of IT and computer programs to handle things right with the courts. Maybe that's part of the problem too.
Well, I think that's going to be over the next 5 to 10 years a big expense and a big concern. I just look at me in my office, how frequently we update our systems, how frequently we update computers, and you have to do that in today's world to stay competitive.
Oh yeah.
But when you get to government, they're consistently trying to recreate the wheel. It would be the equivalent of you starting here and saying, I'm going to make this new video software for my show.
Right.
When there's one on the market that is perfect.
Yes.
That would work great.
Right.
That I could just pay the license fee or pay whatever
Yeah,
fee I need to pay.
it's on the shelf,
and
ready to
implement
go.
it. And the courts and all facets of government, you can look at DMV, you can look at the courts, you can look at all of these, keep trying to recreate the wheel with a new system. I assure you that the federal court in Eastern District has a great software system to scan the documents in, they're accessible online, and why some of those things haven't been implemented just on a broader scale, license them, market them, whatever you need to do,
Right.
as opposed to recreating the wheel at millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
We're going to have to see that technology get into the court system for lots of reasons.
Yeah. So the courts are not exempt from the problems that we seem to have in the state of California with computer systems, and it's just it's an interesting situation they go into. Like you said, instead of buying something off the shelf that already works or can be modified, they all seem to want to reinvent the wheel. And I was involved with government on the federal and military level with the same situation. There's stuff out there, but I don't know. It's pretty funny.
Funny is one word, frustrating is another.
It's both. I look at it as funny because you kind of go, really? I mean, come on, we can do things better. Tell us a little bit about the experiences that you're having running. I know that you get a chance to go and meet and greet a lot of people, and you must be having opportunities to talk to these people about what their frustrations are with the court system. Do you have any examples or anything you might be able to
Well, first, one of the funniest things that happens when you are in this position and you're campaigning and you're out meeting a lot of people and you're at a lot of groups is you hear these groups talk as part of their business part of their meeting about issues they have and how they're going to go to court over this issue or they're going to go to court over that issue. And then when they find out that I'm running for judge, a lot of the questions come up of, well, why do I care who the judge is? And to me, it's funny to not see the nexus between we're going to court and I care who the judge is. Because to me, that would make a big difference.
It's important.
Of who the judge is. So educating people on why the judicial race matters has been a big part of the process. The frustrations are probably what you'd suspect. They feel like their time is wasted. They feel like there's a certain segment that believes they weren't listened to. We talked about the prompt decision making, but by and large, the biggest one is the feeling that there's a wasting of time and that the belief that nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I know all the judges. I know they are cognizant of the fact that people are waiting. There are some things that can be done better, certainly, to stop a lot of the waiting around. But there's some that's somewhat unavoidable. I was joking with one group. It was actually the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I said, you would love for me to tell you that I'm going to get you in and out of here like it's a drive-through.
Right.
But that would be lying to you. That's impossible. Right. What I can promise is that I'll be cognizant of your time. I'll be aware of your time. And if there's a way for me to get you out of here and back on the street where you should be, I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. Right. Are you still going to have times where you're waiting around? Absolutely. Well, it's just part of the process.
You're going to be fair to everybody. I mean, not just the plaintiffs or the district attorney's side or whatever it may be. You as a judge have to be fair to everybody.
Correct.
And so it can be a tough situation. I understand that. And I think I know that some of the people that have talked to me, they say, well, hey, you got some judge candidates coming in there. Get their opinions on certain things. And I tell them, look, there's certain things we can ask the judge candidates, and there's certain things we can't. And so I have to be very careful, and I want to make sure, and Joe won't answer a question that would get him in trouble. But, what's really interesting, though, is that I've explained judge shopping. That's a term that seems to be going around now with some of the lawsuits that are higher into the state level. It's kind of funny, like where you'll see a case that will go to you'd think maybe it'd be in Sacramento, but it ends up in Fresno because they're in front of a different judge.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain cases where you have a choice of venue, meaning it could be here, it could be there. And frankly, a good attorney is going to explore both options and determine where they think for their client they're going to get the best ruling. And it's judges will still have their tendencies, whether we like that or not. They have their background,
right.
they have their...
They're still human.
Yeah, they're still human. And so attorneys will look for the place that they believe is the best for them. It doesn't happen very often on most cases, because most cases, it's an El Dorado County case, has to be filed in El Dorado County. You really don't have a whole lot of choices of which judge you get. There's some mechanism in there. If there's a judge that you believe wouldn't be fair to your position, you could do that one time. But generally speaking, you're getting assigned to a judge, and there's really not a lot of judge shopping within the county.
How about, as a case becomes more public? I've seen, I don't know if this is real life or not, but you see on TV, on these shows, sometimes they say, hey, we want to change a venue. We want to move this case to somewhere that maybe isn't in the forefront. Does that happen here?
I'm trying to think of a case where it has happened. I can't think of one specifically, but it certainly could. A high enough profile case where basically what they're saying is that if we need to get a jury pool, we can't get a jury here that doesn't already have a preconceived notion about this case or know the participants in the case.
Right.
And therefore we have to go out of county to get a jury pool that can fairly make a ruling on this case.
Yeah.
So it's certainly possible. I just can't think of a specific case where it's happened.
I was just wondering, because I had never heard about it. What's your feelings on grand juries?
Grand juries play an integral part to the system. And when we lose a grand jury, like happened in our county a little bit ago, a year ago, I guess, that's a problem for the county as a whole. They absolutely play an integral part. We got to make sure we maintain the integrity of the grand jury, that they're not tainted in any way, and that they do their job.
Right.
And again, it's a selection process like any jury.
Sure.
So you get good jurors, and they generally do a good job. You usually don't hear much about them.
Right. And actually, that's their job. You don't want to really hear about them. I'm a little prejudiced. I did spend a year on the grand jury, and it was, if you have time out there that you're willing to donate to a county, that's a great way of getting to know how our grand jury in El Dorado County works, because it's basically an oversight jury for governmental institutions. But I understand that a grand jury can be, or another jury can be impaneled by, I think, the district attorney's office to hear a case. Does that happen?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, okay, so television again. I don't know. I just didn't know how it worked in El Dorado County or not, but I don't suppose there was a special grand jury ever chosen here.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Yeah. I heard one the other day that I'd never seen before, where actually a trial tried two defendants and ended up having two juries because they were being tried at the same time.
For expediency, they'll often try them at the same time because a lot of the same witnesses, but they will have two juries at times.
Well, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it does exist.
That does exist, so that's kind of interesting. Sheesh. Let's see. Where's those phone calls? 621-1210. Let's get a few people to call in a little bit and talk about what Joe can answer and not answer for you. So, one of the questions that it's been going around, and I put together some questions, and a lot of it's from all over the country, and I don't know if some of them pertain to El Dorado County or not. We have, in California, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when a specific crime has occurred and it's been adjudicated and the person's been found guilty, is there not a guide for the judge as far as how long sentencing can be?
There are a lot of crimes that have sentencing guidelines, certainly.
Okay.
I actually personally don't like when they do mandatory guidelines.
Yeah.
You're ideally electing me to be a judge because you value my judgment.
Right.
And when you take all of the judgment away from the judge, that's a problem, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Guidelines are one thing, but mandatory sentencing is another. I have a problem with the mandatory.
Yeah, it does seem like it doesn't give you. I mean, you're elected to make these decisions, and yet, I wonder what drove this, because California wasn't always this way, wasn't it?
No, but my guess is, and again, my guess is what drove this was disparate punishments for similar crimes across different jurisdictions.
Right.
And so they said, well, wait a minute, why was one guy get X and one guy get Y when it's the same essential crime?
Right.
And that's my guess is where it came from.
I wonder if that was an actual
uniformity.
Yeah, I wonder if that was actual initiative or our legislators.
Yeah, I don't
did
know.
I don't know about that one at all, huh? So one of the other questions that came across here is, why do you believe, or if you believe, the causes of high rates of minority incarcerations? Do you see a number in the courts that seem to be leaning more to one particular group than another?
I personally don't.
Excuse me.
You know, in the areas of law I practice, I really don't see a differentiation in that. Granted, I don't do a lot of criminal law,
Right.
So it's a difficult question from my practice.
Sure.
My criminal law has been limited to basically contempt cases and domestic violence issues, and those are not minority driven by any means.
Right. Just curious about that one. How could the costs of judicial administration be reduced?
I would like to say I'll let you know in a year.
Yeah.
When I'm,
I'll
when
tell
I'm,
you
when
when
I'm
I-
in that spot.
when I'm on the
I'll
chair.
be better able to tell you. But I mean, there are definitely expediencies that should be done. And I think after an initial capital outlay for technology as a way of bringing costs down too, which is why we all use it
Right.
in our daily practices and our daily work. We use technology because it makes things easier. We're not typing a paper over and over again. We could pull it back up on a computer that we didn't do 30 years ago. So technology will have an impact in that. It will have an impact on staffing.
Right.
We're way down on staffing, and so things are harder to get filed and processed for the clerks.
Yeah.
The clerks work extremely hard.
Oh, yeah.
So that you don't really realize that much of a difference. But they're working twice as hard because their staffing's down.
So that also falls into the facilities problem. If you have everybody spread all over, where a central location, it's easier to share information. That would help a
I
lot.
mean, you're duplicating efforts. You don't have to look any further than the bailiffs.
Yeah.
To have bailiffs at 4 or 5 different places around the county to watch the courtrooms. You know, every courtroom has a metal detector at the front,
Right.
staffed by a couple deputies.
Right.
If you only had one facility, you'd have one set of deputies and one metal detector, and
That
off you
could
go.
be a big savings.
Where you have 4 or 5 now. It's duplication of efforts.
That's great. I never even looked at that, so that's a good point. There could be a huge savings on that. And that alone could probably pay for the facilities. So another question is, what do you believe to be the root causes of high number of juvenile offenders?
Well, I mean, there's probably lots of root causes socially.
Just curious, yeah.
That exist for that. I mean, you could look at a difference in generations, and just the family structure probably doesn't help the fact that there's more juvenile offenders now than there were when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a big factor, I'm sure.
I wonder if that isn't more so in the bigger cities than it is in the rural areas. I grew up in a period of time where I was more afraid of my father than I was any other authority figure, and we don't seem to have that in our society anymore, and maybe that's got something to do with it.
Well, I mean, it's the entitlement mentality that exists.
Yeah.
That it's my right to do that.
Yeah, I can do what I want.
I can do what I want, and I agree. Most people, my growing up, were more scared of what would happen at home than they were anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. How about, do you believe there's such a thing as a victimless crime?
I don't. A crime is a crime. It affects everybody. It affects society as a whole.
Yeah.
So anytime you affect, I mean, just because you can't specifically hold up a picture of a person and say this was the guy affected, doesn't mean it didn't affect that person. I have a difficult time with victimless crime. As a
Yeah,
theory.
I know some people look at it, we're debating in California on the medical marijuana situation, and some of those, and some of the people on that side say, hey, who's it hurting? It's victimless, but it's up to our legislators to make the laws and the judges to make sure that they're getting heard right.
Correct. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not my job to say when I'm judge that I don't think that law really is a good law, so I'm not going to enforce it. We call that legislating from the bench. If I wanted to be a legislator, I'd run for assembly.
Yeah.
I want to be a judge, and my job is to enforce the Constitution as written and the laws as written.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me. I mean, that's what you're there for. What's been your greatest accomplishment in your legal career?
In my legal career,
Something you're particularly proud of?
I'm proud of my reputation as a whole, to be perfectly honest. I was taught early on when you're in business, no matter what kind of business, especially as a lawyer, as you can imagine all the negativity that goes along with that
Absolutely.
at times, that the only thing I have as a stock in trade is my reputation. And we have spent, and I say we, my wife and I have spent years building our reputation. That was one of the first challenges when we decided to run for
Right.
judge was, I'm not going to be that guy that ruins my reputation in a 6-month election cycle just to get elected.
Not going to sell your soul.
I'm not going to sell my soul. I am who I am. You know me for a couple
Yep.
of years. I've never been different around you.
No.
No matter what group you see me in front of or where you see me. And that's the easiest way to maintain a reputation is just
Sure.
be authentic all the time. And so that's what we've always strived to do. And now with, I come from a large family, so with nieces and nephews and my kids, we're constantly preaching to our kids that your last name matters.
Right.
Your last name doing something negative has an effect on not only you,
But the whole
but the
family.
whole family as a
Right.
group, because we're all kind of tied together that
Yeah.
way. And so instilling that to my kids at a young age is critical too.
You know, I look at some of these families and the situations that that unfortunately some of the parents are not particularly good parents, and you worry a lot about these kids and where they're going to end up in, and hopefully they don't get lost in the system. Is there anything on the bench that can be done to help improve that situation?
Well, there's a lot of things that are happening on the bench. I mean, things like teen court is a great example, where the judges are you have teenagers as all of the participants in the process, determining what should happen.
Right.
And that's helpful because you're judged by your
Peers.
And that's a great system. And I think there are lots of things, the teen court, the participating in the schools, being active is critical in that role. And one of the things I look forward to, and I think different than a lot of these guys that we've seen over the years, is that my plan is to get elected and not disappear. So many people just disappear because they think that's part of the deal. You get elected and I don't need to be at things anymore, and I'm no longer accessible. I plan on being around. I mean, I look at John DeAgostini as an example.
Yeah.
He gets elected, he's still at every event. He's still accessible. You can walk up to him at any of these events, introduce yourself, ask your question.
Yeah.
If he doesn't know it, he'll get back to you.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. And
It's amazing. He's a great example for anybody running for office. He's genuine, and you're genuine. And that's so important because, we can get people in here and you can almost tell right off the bat, they're either looking for a salary or something to do.
Yeah.
I see as somebody who actually wants to, help the system, not be a hindrance to it, nor have a personal agenda. And I think that's important in a judgeship situation, considering how powerful a judge really is. It's important.
It is, and it frustrates me because I look at it as manipulation. If I tell you what you want to hear to get elected, I just refuse to do that. And you watch people in all different offices change things right before an election cycle, join groups right before an election cycle.
Right.
We had that conversation a long time
We
ago
did.
where I refused to join a group before or during an election for the sake, not because I didn't like the group, but I was afraid of the perception of it.
Exactly.
And I literally joined a group like 10 days after the
Yeah.
election last time that I found during the election process. I enjoyed it. I liked what they stood for, and I joined it after. And that's how it should be. It
So that's
shouldn't be joining a
integrity.
group.
Yeah,
That's how
absolutely.
I look at it.
Yeah,
So,
and I agree with you too. I look, I belong to obviously a number of groups, and I look at people coming in, and I look at it. Okay, so they're just coming in because they're running for office, and they want to say, "Hey, I'm a member of XYZ,"
and you won't see them after the election.
And that's right. You'll never see them again. That's right. So that's a good point. Can you describing if you've run into this at some point in your in your legal career, an ethical dilemma.
Yeah, there's plenty. There's when your client wants you to take a position that you know is an untenable position, and by telling the client that, you may lose the client, but it's the right thing to do.
Right.
You do that. I face it a lot in my family law practice because I always tell clients at the outset that I'm going to tell you if I think you're doing something that's a hindrance to your kids. Now, I don't represent the kids. I represent the client, the parent. And I've lost clients because I say, no, you shouldn't handle it that way. That's not the right way. That's not good for the kids. And you lose clients over that, but I could sleep at night having lost the client. And I don't know that I could sleep at night if I did something that I knew was not good for the kids.
Right.
So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Which one can I live with? And make my call that way.
And I think rightfully so. You want to be able to sleep at night, not worry about it.
More important than anything.
And speaking of which, though, have you had a case that you kind of, we kind of talked about the armchair quarterback situation in a previous talk. Have you had a case where you kind of went, maybe I should have gone in a different direction?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you take cases for a living and represent the public,
at some point,
you will get snowed by a client. You will get misled, and I always say, as an attorney, I have a right to believe my client until I know that I shouldn't believe my client.
Yeah.
Once I know I shouldn't, then you get out. But until then, you believe your client, because if you don't go into it that way, and you don't go 100% all in, but you have a right to believe the client.
Right.
And without that, I don't know that you can do private practice and represent clients on a daily basis. And
I don't understand how you hire a person to be your advocate and you're not 100% honest with that person who can't disclose anything. If you can't be 100% honest with your attorney, you really do have a problem.
You do, but the problem, that's one problem. But the other problem is people can convince themselves of a lot of things as being true.
That's true.
So they're not telling you the truth. They firmly believe they're right in what they're telling you. History will tell you after the fact that they weren't.
Right.
When you hear other facts that come out, and that's the challenge of representing real clients.
Boy, I can't see anything worse for the judge as well as all the attorneys involved with somebody who's been basically lying the whole time about what's going on. You've wasted all this court time and everything, and
it happens every day in our court system.
Oh man, that's not great. We've reached 30 minutes here, and I was really hoping we could get a call. I'll wait another minute or two just to see if there's something out there that you'd like to ask Joe. But you know what? He does such a good job of answering all those questions already. I understand, well, gee, we covered all that, but it is 621-1210, and if you want to call. Let's finish up a little bit here. What would you say is, growing up and your decision to become an attorney, what were the major influences in that decision?
Surely my family.
Yeah.
Like I say, I have two older brothers and older sister, my mom and dad, and they've all been very influential in shaping me, I'm certain. And my parents especially were great about, we always grew up where education was a priority.
Okay.
And we used to always joke, you can stop school whenever you want, after law school or after medical school. Either one is fine. So school was always a priority. And my mom would tell you I was always argumentative and wanting to debate.
So the attorney in you is natural? Yeah. Either that or you were just terrible in wood shop.
That's right. Well, I laugh because went back to my high school reunion a while back, and they had a list of what you said you were going to be when you were graduating and what you were now, and there were probably only a handful that were the same, and mine was one of them. Yeah. And if you would have asked me back about that same time, would I ever be a judge, without knowing what's entailed as far as campaigning or being appointed, I would have told you yes at that point as well. So it's kind of a natural progression for
Something
me.
you really wanted to do. That's great. Unlike a crazy guy like me that have held about 30 different jobs. So I'd get bored easily. Well, Joe, you know what? I want to thank you very much for coming into our little studio and supporting us. You've helped Old Guy Tech TV, and I hope that we can get this message out to the people that you want to get the message out to. So this will be available on YouTube, and you can link it to your site or go to Old Guy Tech's site, whatever you want to do. It's there for you. And thank you for coming and making the show what it is. You got any final words?
The only final words I would have are, I would ask you to look at our website when you get a chance. One of the things that is the interesting part of this process is that people will come out and put their name on the line to vouch for me. And they do it by way of an endorsement. We have an endorsement page that is frankly, a who's who of El Dorado County, and I'm extremely humbled by that, but I'm extremely proud of that. Guys like John D'Agostini, our sheriff, has endorsed me. Retired Sheriff Hal Barker, retired SAC Sheriff John McGinnis, a who's who of the attorneys in the county, a who's who of community leaders, Sam Paredes, who's Executive Director of Gun Owners of California. We just have, it's a very large list, including several judges, including Judge Proud and Judge Phimister. Yesterday we learned the Mountain Democrat endorsed me. So it's just been a who's who. It's really humbling because I understand what's entailed in endorsement, because now your reputation is at stake because you're saying this guy's the guy.
Right.
So when the people are willing to do that, that just means so incredibly much to me. And I would ask people to look at that list.
Well put. And you know, I understand the humbling position, and it is very good that, you know, that you feel that way, because too many people take that part laissez-faire. And
I don't see that at all.
Yeah, I know you don't, but I'm glad it's working out for you. It's kind of like I said before. Thank you for running, Joe. I really mean it, because we need people to run for the office and who have your skill set. You know, win, lose, or draw, hold your head high. You ran, you put yourself out there, and I think it's real important for those of you out there as voters. One of the things I always bring up with everybody is, you know, don't feel like your vote doesn't count, because it does. And remember, it counts probably more on a local level than any other level there is. So it's important that you get involved. You know the people that are running, and you get to see and hear them. And that's why we're here. So we really hope that you help support Old Guy Tech TV. And we're going to wrap this up really quick. And I'm going to say, hey, thank you very much for watching Old Guy Tech TV interviews. And we are going to have a number of other people as it goes on. But I want to thank you very much for watching. This is Rob with Old Guy Tech TV. We did an interview today with Joe Hoffman running for judge. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.